Hepatitis C is basically a virus. Primarily, it will affect your liver by the process what we call this the chronic inflammations. In a layman term, I would say this hardening of the liver. They will end up with the liver failure, and quite significant proportions of them also will end up with the hepatocellular carcinoma or liver cancer, in other words. The treatment in the past is so, I would say, horrible to a certain extent and perhaps toxic, because we were dealing with the treatment like interferon before and ribavirin. Side effects are horrible. But when the DEA came in, that was sometimes in 2015, I think, into Malaysia, and it's a major breakthrough because the drug is tolerated and the efficacy of the treatment is very high. There is no side effect. I mean, we're not talking about any problem to the liver, to the kidney, so on and so forth. We are not eligible for the generic medicine because we know that generic medicines for the DEA is only available for the third world country. And we're talking about a few 100,000 for one particular patient. So we are not being able to get this generic medicine. And the original medicine is so exorbitantly high. From few 100,000, we have managed to bring down the price to about $300 US. So this is a major milestone. We started at sometime in 2018. Until now, we have treated many thousands of patients already, and majority of them in the community.
Sebenarnya saya berminat nak untuk buat blood donation. Berapa bulan lepas tu dia call, bagi surat datang kat saudara negara untuk screening. Dia suspect lah, mula-mula tu ada Hep C juga. And then saya di-refer kepada hospital Ampang. Udah dapat tahu yang udah ada hepatitis C ni, macam mama pun risau jugalah. Rasa macam kita pun tengah nak STPM, nak exam dah. Kita tunggu result daripada doktor juga. Tunggu banyak menunggulah sebab kita pun tak tahu kan treatment apa sesuai. Masa ada kat hospital, adalah kenal kakak seorang ni. Kakak seorang ni dia pernah buat treatment yang lama punya, yang injection. Dia ceritalah sakit dia macam mana kan. So bila Dr. Rashadah cakap ada treatment yang ni, okey lah, mama pun setujulah nak terima. Mama pun convince kat kita juga, kata dah boleh lah buat benda ni. Family support lah, mama yang banyak support. Alhamdulillah dah sihat. So harapan untuk jadi lebih better, lebih sihat, dan sentiasa orang kata know about yourself lah.
Hepatitis yang saya dapat tahu ni daripada lebih kurang 10 tahun lepas, di mana seorang doktor telah bagi tahu kat saya, kata saya ada Hep. Makan masa lama jugalah, 2-3 tahun baru saya terbuka hati untuk nak pergi merawatkan diri kan. Selepas kawan ambil ubat tu dengan cara suntikan dulu kan, dia mendapat allergic macam dia punya satu hari tu dia tak boleh, dia condemn. Dia tak boleh buat kerja apa langsung. Dia sebab terlalu kuat efek ubat tu. Sebelum daripada ni, anggapan saya ni memang daripada ubat yang lama dulu. Kita rasa kemungkinan ubat yang ni serupa macam pengalaman kawan-kawan dulu kan. Tapi sekarang ni bila doktor bagi tahu ubat sekarang ni okey, saya cubalah. Yang kata yang keluaran yang terbaru daripada ubat yang diberi makan cara biji lah, kapsul apa biji kan. Ubat ni kira okey, tanpa ada efek, kira semuanya kira selesa. Tanpa kita rasa, tak tahu penyakit kita sudah okey.
后就经过医生的讲解给我听了，然后他说这个肝炎病是很严重的，它会肝硬化，然后就变成天色就死了的这样子。然后第一批药医生给我是和打针的啦，药源吃跟打针的，然后是没有吃了这个药5个月，医生在 test 啦，抽血 test 了，说我对我这个身体没有效果他说我的 virus 还有存在啦，在我体内。我就想要孩子嘛，就问医生说可不可以要孩子，然后医生就跟我讲说可以是可以，但是problem 是怕孩子出事等下不知道的嘛，对吗？因为你吃这药嘛。然后他说可以要孩子是可以的，但是问题是怕等下如果孩子出事了，孩子有问题你怎么办？但是我老婆就说我不能再等了嘛，因为我老婆年纪也那时候也40出了嘛，对吗？她跟我同年嘛，只是医生跟我讲说，就是等新的药进来罢了啦，外国的新药进来马来西亚才，但是那时候就只有等到10年、11年、12年也来了啦，11年多了啦，接近50了嘛，49岁多了。开始吃第2批新药的时候吃3个月，但是好消息来说我的肝病好了，我的肝炎已经降到0了，没有了。听到这个好消息，我就第一时间我就想到要孩子嘛，医生就劝我们说，哇，你老婆这么大年纪了，超龄了啦，产妇对吗？说又是第一胎嘛。没有生过孩子嘛，我老婆第一胎嘛，她说有风险啦，风险很大啦。她说对了，也是我最大的愿望啦，这个愿望希望嘛，然后不能有孩子。
Apabila doktor bagi tahu disyaki ada kuman hepatitis, saya rasa terkejut. Penyakit hati ni satu masa dia akan attack dan kita pada masa tu kita dah tak boleh nak buat apa dah. Saya bimbang dia terjadi macam tu. Cabaran yang pertama yang besar bagi saya untuk saya datang sini sebab jaraknya jauh. Jadual dia tu kena tetap, jadi saya kena plan betul-betul jadual tu. Sebab doktor kata dia boleh dirawat. Saya rasa takut dan saya harap boleh baiklah dia punya penyakit tu. Kita mesti ikut, ada masa makan dia kena makan ubat tu kena tepat. Kalau kita terlupa nak makan pula macam mana. Jadi doktor bagi komplit lah, kita kena ikut yang semua tu. Saya ambil ubat ni tak ada langsung kesan sampingan. Kita nak rasa memual ke, rasa pening ke, semua tak ada. Sangat selesa lah. Just makan ubat tu, lepas tu tak ada kesan apa. Pada mula sampai akhir, lepas tu sampai pada saya jumpa Datuk Razi pakar. Lepas tu dia bagi keputusan apa semua, jadi tak ada apa dia tanya bimbang, semua penyakit dah tak ada, dah beres, saya tak macam normal. Saya sangat seronoklah dan bersyukur dia.
It's sometimes called the silent disease because people with the disease don't know they've had the infection. And it's only many years later that some of them develop cirrhosis, liver cirrhosis, or liver cancer. The new treatment are the DAAs, or the direct-acting antivirals, and these are better tolerated by the patient. But unfortunately, 80% of the people with the infection live in low and middle income countries, and treatment is not affordable for them. When DNDi was studying the DAA landscape, they came across remdesivir. And we also found out that an Egyptian company, pharmaceutical company, Pharco, had done a clinical trial using remdesivir. Following this, DNDi, together with the Ministry of Health in Malaysia and the Ministry of Public Health in Thailand, conducted a clinical trial on the safety and efficacy of remdesivir. DNDi actually coordinated all the different partners. In fact, they're like the conductor of an orchestra. So they brought together all the different partners. The results were very promising. We're extremely excited that now there is a treatment option, an affordable treatment option for people with the infection. And this, of course, with the DAAs, it is possible to eliminate hepatitis C.
Sawadee-kap Tukun. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jeanmichel, and I'm the director of the DNDi office in Southeast Asia, based in Kuala Lumpur since the opening of DNDi. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of Siriraj and DNDi to this webinar, South-South Leadership, working together on medical R&D to meet the needs of all patients. The example of dengue. I'm very excited that we will be digging deeper into the prospect of collaborations in the regions and how to harness endemic country potential. There will be two parts to our webinar. One to set the scene and background of this new collaboration, and the second part will talk about dengue, as it is the most concrete expression of the ambitions we have defined. We want to see stronger South-South collaboration for medical R&D for neglected patients. I would like to introduce now Professor Dr. Prasid Watanapa, who is the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine, Siriraj Hospital, Mahidol, for a welcome note. Professor Prasid, many thanks for hosting this webinar and for your support and collaboration. The floor is yours.
Thank you. And DNDi's Executive Director, Dr. Bernard Picot, Director of DNDi Southeast Asia Regional Office, Mr. Jeanmichel, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. This is an incredible week filled with such great news. First of all, please join me in congratulating Dr. Bernard Picot, the founder and executive director of DNDi, for receiving the Prince Mahidol Award 2020 in the field of public health. This prestigious award represents Dr. Picot's unwavering commitment to saving lives and improving the quality of life of millions of people worldwide, especially neglected patients in developing countries and low-income countries. Secondly, yesterday, the Faculty of Medicine Siriraj Hospital, Mahidol University, had officially joined forces with the DNDi in R&D collaboration to find and deliver new therapeutic solutions for dengue. Our institution is the first partner from dengue endemic countries in alliance with the DNDi, with a target to develop a safe, affordable, and effective treatment to eradicate dengue fever within 5 years. As we all know, neglected tropical diseases persist due to various biosocial factors. That is to say, growing population densities, unplanned urban development, poor water storage, and unsatisfactory sanitary conditions were all common factors that contribute to the worsening burden of these neglected tropical diseases, not just for Thailand, but for many countries around the world. The diseases tend to be most prevalent among the poor and marginalized and neglected populations who live in rural or hard-to-reach areas. On a personal scale, these diseases push them further into poverty and a life marred by deformity and stigma. Consequently, it leads to a significant impact on the socio-economic status on the regional and global scale. And when it comes to neglected tropical diseases, dengue fever is a global and regional threat, causing additional major public health burden for our communities in the rapidly evolving COVID-19 pandemic. Despite an estimated 390 million dengue infections each year in more than 100 countries worldwide, no specific treatment is available yet. This not only causes immense suffering, but places significant pressure on already overburdened health systems. More than 70% of the global dengue burdens is in Asia, where severe dengue has become a leading cause of hospitalization and death among children and adults in many countries. According to the Department of Disease Control of Thailand, there were around 71,000 dengue cases, with 51 deaths in 2020. The highest incidence rates were found in 15 to 24 years, 10 to 14 years, and 25 to 34 years, respectively. The risk of severe dengue and death were chronic diseases such as hypertension and heart diseases, obesity, and delayed hospital visits. Despite extensive research and development for treatment for dengue fever and progress in vaccines, we have not yet achieved sufficient results. The engagement with a great partner such as DNDi is the crucial first step for Thailand to empower our R&D collaboration to eradicate the deadly dengue virus in its strongholds in Thailand and this region. Finally, I would like to thank all relevant parties for the huge amount of preparation work to make this remarkable event happen. Let's join hands and work together to make our commitment come through. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Professor Dr. Surimun, who is the co-director of the Global Health Center, the Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies, Geneva. She is also a board member of DNDi and will be speaking as a board member of DNDi. Welcome, Dr. Surimun. The floor is yours.
On behalf of the board of directors of DNDi, I have really just 3 simple messages I'd like to offer you this afternoon. The first message is how essential it is to have research and development capacity in countries and in regions. And we've seen this, of course, with COVID-19 vaccines. We've seen that countries that were able to invest early in research and development were in a much stronger position, in fact, to secure early access to vaccines than those that were not. And we can see on my first slide here just an illustration of who were, in fact, the largest investors. And this is including both push incentives when you invest before the product is developed, as well as the commitment to purchase vaccines once the COVID vaccines were developed. But this slide also illustrates my second message. And my second message is how important it is to invest public money and to have public stewardship over the research and development process. And also that this is already happening in the Southeast Asian region. So you see here about the top 20 investors worldwide in research and development for COVID-19 vaccines through both push and pull incentive. And you can see here, of course, you have dominance by the European Union and the United States on the left-hand side, but you also have here Hong Kong, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, the Philippines. And so you have a number of countries who are already investing in research and development. And we've seen that, of course, with a number of important projects, such as the development of remdesivir for hepatitis C in both Thailand and Malaysia in partnership with DNDi. I think there's probably room for much more international cooperation in the region, however, and that more international cooperation can strengthen both South-South collaboration and, of course, the economies of scale and the sharing of knowledge and the building of capacity that's so essential to actually building national and regional R&D ecosystems. My third and last message is that not only is R&D capacity essential and that it requires investment and public stewardship, but it's also feasible. It will bear fruit. And again, we've already seen this, of course, with a number of different projects, including remdesivir. But we also see more and more that research and development is done by not only large multinational firms, but also by a number of different types of players. Could I have my next slide, please? And what you can see in this slide, it may be a little bit hard to see, but what you can see is that the origins of innovation are not just the big firms that you hear sometimes in the media, the Pfizers or the Mercks of the world. What you see on the screen is that academic institutions play an important role, public bodies, public-private product development partnerships like DNDi, small and medium enterprises, as well as, of course, the large firms that many of us the large multinational firms that many of us have heard of. But what this slide doesn't perhaps show as clearly is that there has been a gradual shift over time, and that is a shift to more and more of an important role being played by SMEs and by non-traditional actors. And so I think this is really critical in a region that is really trying to build up and strengthen its R&D capacity to see how this is indeed part of a big international trend, and that we see already the fruits of this kind of R&D in a number of disease areas. I'd like to reiterate again my three messages. The first is how essential it is to have R&D capacity in countries, not only for health, but also for economic and for social well-being. The second, the importance of investing at national level, public funding, and for public authorities to steer the R&D process. And third, that these investments, this investment of political and financial capital will bear fruit. I'd like to also reiterate how strongly the board of directors of DNDi supports shifting the center of gravity, supports what is in the DNDi strategy, both in the region and globally, to shift the center of gravity of research and development so that it's done primarily in the countries that are directly facing neglected diseases and that know these neglected diseases at a very personal and human level. Now it's my great honor and pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Dr. Bernard Pécoul. He is, of course, the recipient of the Prince Mahidol Award, and I can tell you that the board was ecstatic when we heard this news. It's such a prestigious honor. Really, really delightful for us to receive this news last year. He is, of course, the founder and the executive director of DNDi. On a more personal level, he's been a mentor to me for many years, for about 23 years that I've known him now. And last but not least, he's somebody whom I deeply admire at a personal level for his vision. Bernard is someone who has envisioned a different world and worked and succeeded in making that a reality, initially for access to treatment and with the creation of DNDi, a vision for the ability to do R&D in all parts of the world, for people to be able to control their own destinies and to improve the health of their own population. So congratulations, Bernard, you really live up to Nelson Mandela's wise saying that everything seems impossible until it's done. Over to you.
Thank you, Suri, and good afternoon to all of you, or good morning for those based in Brazil. So today, in the next 10 minutes, I will present you the, next slide, please. I will present you the strategic plan of DNDi for the period 2021-2028. So during this period of time, we aim to complete our objective of developing new drugs, because our subtitle is 25 treatment in 25 years. Next slide, please. So just to remember a little bit of background on DNDi. So we was born in 2003, based on the needs that have been identified by doctors working in different countries that were frustrated because of the lack of drugs available for treating the people in many circumstances. So this was what is the baseline for creating a new initiative. And next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, I think today we can say that in 2022, our work is even more urgent than ever for different reasons, because the context of an R&D capacity that is totally oriented towards the profit keep many diseases totally outside of the priorities. So we continue to have the same challenge that when we started. But in addition, we have also an issue with new drugs or new tools that are developed and that are not distributed equitably to most of the people. And I will come back on this later on. But in addition, I have to say that there is also some current situation that increase even more the pressure on us to deliver. So I could refer to the current crisis on COVID-19, but also to the situation of climate-sensitive infectious diseases that will progress in the next period of time. So next slide. What, in a nutshell, what we have developed until now during the last 18 years is 9 treatments that have saved millions of lives. We have developed a portfolio of projects, today more than 40 projects in the portfolio. we are running permanently 20 clinical studies in different parts of the world. We set up some clinical research platform. And of course, we bring together a large number of partners, institutions over more than 40 countries. I have to mention that we, with WHO, created just a few years ago a new initiative on antimicrobial resistance called GARDP that was also a major challenge in front of them. Next slide, please. So the strategic plan for the next period, in addition to the objective of developing 15 to 18 additional treatment, want to remain on our 3 pillars of activity. So one is innovate to save life, so developing new treatment. The second one is to foster inclusive and sustainable solutions, so to strengthen existing capacities in low and middle income countries. And the last but not least is an objective to advocate for change. We think that we need to influence a better ecosystem to stimulate R&D on a long-term basis. Next slide. So to deliver 18 new treatment, it seems to be very aggressive, very optimistic. But this is really based on our current understanding of our portfolio. So we expect to develop an additional 10 to 12 new treatment based on projects that are very mature today in a portfolio that are close to the end. And in addition, thanks to the effort on discovery, we think that we could bring 5 to 7 new treatment based on new chemical entities that are at the early stage of development. We clearly want to add some additional strategy to this portfolio strategy, typically to position public health leader in low and middle income country in a key position to support R&D. We also want to put children and mother at the center of our strategy. We continue to promote open science and transparency, and we are very open to look at a new technology and integrate new technology on this field of very neglected disease. Next slide. So in terms of diseases, we will continue to concentrate on a very neglected tropical diseases. So sleeping sickness, filariasis, leishmaniasis, mycetoma, Chagas disease will remain at the core of our activity. We'll complete our activity on HIV with 2 projects, one on HIV pediatric as well as another project on cryptococcal meningitis. We'll also continue our activity on hepatitis, particularly hepatitis C. And recently, we have been involved in a COVID-19 response, and we are exploring a new field of activity. I will talk later about dengue, but we are also exploring potential activity on schistosomiasis and snakebite. Next slide. In our strategic plan, we continue to have access in mind from the start. So in developing treatment, we want to secure that those treatments will be affordable and with a sustainable production and supply. We want to facilitate introduction in different new drugs, in new treatment, in new guidelines. And we want also to improve some market dynamic in the context of neglected population that is always suffering for lack of attractive market. Next slide. So one of the main objectives of this strategic plan is to go even a step further in consolidating the capacity of research in low and middle income countries. And we would like to support as much as possible South-South leadership and South-South collaboration to innovate for those diseases. So in this case, we have very specific objective. Of course, we will continue to attract public leadership. We will continue to support clinical platform research, but we want to develop more also phase 1 studies in low and middle income countries, also develop capacity to conduct discovery research. Next slide. Advocacy for change remain central in our vision because we consider that changing the environment will propose sustainable solution to this lack of innovation. So we are not considering DNDi as the solution to the problem, but more as an example of a model that could be implemented in different places of the world, respecting the principle of needs-driven R&D with open science and transparency, with equitable access to the fruit of the innovation, sustainability in the effort of building capacities, as well as coordination and collaboration among partners. Next slide. Just 3 examples to conclude my presentation. One is hepatitis C, where we are very happy with the success of the story of establishing collaboration between several partners in the South, several pharmaceutical partners from Egypt, from Malaysia, from Argentina working together, partners from Malaysia and Thailand working together in developing the drug through clinical studies. And now with a clear strategy in front of us is to have an access implementation in order to have an impact on hepatitis C that is a candidate, potential candidate for elimination, but at the condition is that the drugs that are currently available and that are very effective should be implemented worldwide with products that are affordable and available to the very vulnerable population. So next slide, on COVID-19, we have used our experience, in fact, to support research on low and middle income countries. First of all, we have set up a COVID-19 clinical research coalition to facilitate a change and stimulate research in low and middle income countries. We have put in place a clinical trial platform called AntiCOV, starting in Africa to test early treatment in COVID in order to avoid development of severe diseases and to avoid to put pressure on a hospital system. We have put in place some collaboration also on discovery to select new antivirals. And last but not least, we have also advocating for more equity in access to existing drugs, particularly, of course, today is vaccines, but tomorrow the treatment, because we know that there is attractive treatment coming into the market, but unfortunately, it's not obvious that those treatments will be available to large number. Just to conclude with the last slide, I would like to say that, and it will be the topic of the next panel, we have, previous slide, please. So we have selected dengue as a new disease in our portfolio. So it has been already mentioned that dengue is very prevalent worldwide, particularly in Asia. It's affecting a lot of people. There is quite a lot of severe form of dengue, and today there is no treatment at all. So with a strategy of combining repurpose existing antivirals that could potentially be active on dengue, as well as a company of strategy of selecting totally new chemical entity, we expect to develop a new treatment in the next period of time. So on this basis, I would like to conclude, to thank you for your attention, and of course, we'll come back on more detail on dengue during the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bernard, but also thank you, Dr. Surimun and Dr. Praset, for helping us to set a little bit the background for the second part of this webinar. Indeed, I think there is no better example, as Bernard was just saying, of the ambitions that we have expressed in our new strategic plan, that to work closely with endemic countries to face the challenges of dengue, and a challenge that will grow in the context of climate change. So in the next session, together, it will be an open discussion, a dialogue session between endemic countries leader and leaders from DNDi, and we want to learn more a little bit of how we can find collectively a solution for dengue. As the moderator of the next session, it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Dr. Praset, who is the Deputy Dean for Research at the Faculty of Medicine of Siriraj, Mahidol. Professor Praset, the floor is yours.
Well, welcome to our panel discussion. I would like to think of this session as not only a scientific discussion, but also an informal inauguration of our collaborative effort in the future. So I'm really excited about this. So, okay, there will be 4 panelists from the 4 countries, 5, including me, the country that we joined the collaboration, and 2 panelists from the DNDi. So, I would like to introduce first Professor Dr. Pramod Garg. He is the Executive Director of the Translational Health Science and Technology Institute from India. Hi, Dr. Pramod, nice to see you. Hello. Okay.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Nice to see you. The second is Dr. Shahnaz Murad. She's the technical advisor of the Project Health Corporation of the Ministry of Health, Malaysia. Hello, Dr. Shahnaz.
Hello.
Hi, nice to see you. Okay, the third one, Professor Rosemary Sang. She's the Chief Research Scientist at the Kenya Medical Research Institute and the International Center of Insect Physiology and Ecology from Kenya. Hello, Professor Sang. Nice to see you. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Okay, for the first one, Professor Dr. Marco Orello Krieger. He's the Vice President of the Health Production and Innovation in Health Field Plus. Hello, Dr. Marco. Hello, Dr. Marco, do you hear us? Okay, I assume he asked and will join shortly. Oh, hi, there he is. Hello, Dr. Marco. You hear us, right? Okay, nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. Okay, and 2 panelists from DNDi, you already know Dr. Bernard. I would like to introduce the other one, Dr. Isabella Ribeiro. She's the Cluster Director for Viral Disease. Hello, Isabella.
Hello,
nice
it's a pleasure. Very nice to see you, Professor Praset. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we have 1 hour in our session. This is what I would like to do. Okay, so for the first round, we will go in a round of, okay, please introduce yourself, your institution, maybe tell us a little bit about your dengue research program and how it will contribute to our effort. We will spend a few minutes each, so we will have like less than half an hour on this first round, maybe 20 minutes. And afterward, I will direct each question to each of you specifically to facilitate the discussion, to try to get the understanding of our collaborative effort. Okay. So anyway, for the discussion after the introductory round, even though I will try to kind of direct the question to each of you, but feel free to join in. Raise your hand if you want to join any part of the question of the discussion. Okay. Okay. Maybe we start with Dr. Pramod. Okay, please introduce your institute a little bit fast. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. My name is Pramod Garg. I am a professor of gastroenterology at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. And currently I am executive director of Translational Health Science and Technology Institute, which is an autonomous institution under the Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, Ministry of Science and Technology. My institution, THSTI, is engaged in basic science, translational and clinical research. In fact, it's kind of a unique institution itself, which is engaged in all kinds of research. Our particular focus has been on infectious diseases, which include tuberculosis, dengue, and now, of course, SARS-CoV-2. Now, in the field of tuberculosis, for example, multiple groups are working to understand the pathogenesis of the tubercular bacteria. How does it persist for long in the body? What is the host response? What are the immune responses? And then on the translational side, we are developing multiple molecules. In fact, a couple of molecules are at a stage of taking to the clinical trial in the next 2 to 3 years. Then in SARS-CoV-2, the institute has been engaged in multiple areas. For example, we developed clinical cohorts of patients with COVID-19. We followed them up longitudinally to understand what is the clinical trajectory. We studied vaccine effectiveness, particularly against the new emerging variants, including Delta and now Omicron. We also are engaged in vaccine development, both helping other industry partners which are developing the vaccine. In fact, 3 of the vaccines which have been approved in India, their entire preclinical work and immunological responses work was done at THSTI. And now currently we are also developing our own vaccine in SARS-CoV-2. We have also developed animal models for COVID-19 and developed diagnostic kits for antibodies. When it comes to dengue, dengue is one of the major areas at THSTI, and there are multiple groups which are working in the field of dengue. We have also established interinstitutional partnerships with other institutions, for example, ICGB, Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, and other institutions in the country. Now, in dengue, there are multiple areas. For example, we have a group working on the virus, where clinical isolates of virus are being collected. They are being genome sequenced, and a well phenotyped and genotyped multiple serotypes of viruses are available in THSTI, which we also share with other partners for research. Then there is a group working on developing and designing antigens which are relevant to dengue virus, and these are being used as a bait for antibody detection by our partner institution. Then there is a group working on the animal models of dengue. In fact, we are very happy that we have successfully developed a mice model of dengue virus, and this is the one where we'll be testing many therapeutic molecules. We are also doing in vitro therapeutic testing of various molecules against the dengue virus. So, in addition to infectious disease, the institute is also engaged in other diseases. For example, mother and child health is a major area that we work on. We have established a very large cohort of pregnant women, following them up to understand their various risk factors for preterm delivery. Institute is also engaged in clinical trials. In fact, we have an academic CRO with us, and that's part of the THSTI, which is actually supervising 17 clinical trials, multi-center trials in the country. So in nutshell, this is an institution which is engaged in basic science, biology, translational research, and clinical research. I'll be happy to answer questions, but I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pramod. Now, Dr. Chanas, it's your turn. Maybe you can tell us about the MOH of Malaysia, which has been very, play a very impressive leading role in hepatitis C, I would say. So, please, Dr. Chanas.
Hello, everybody. I was actually formerly the Deputy Director General for Health in the Ministry of Health Malaysia, and my portfolio was research and technical support. Prior to that, I was Director for the Institute for Medical Research. Dengue has been in Malaysia for a very long time. I think the first outbreak was reported in 1904. So it's been with us for a century, and we've been battling this disease for a century. So there's quite a lot of work that has been done already. Early research was more on entomology and vector control. The main research institute carrying out dengue work is the Institute for Medical Research, and I was formerly the director there. The IMR was established in 1900, so it's a very old research institute. It carries out biomedical research, and dengue is one of the priority areas. So the current work on dengue is really in 5 main areas. One is innovative vector control, which is like using sterile insect techniques, insect growth regulators, using the Wolbachia. Another area of research is prediction of outbreak, using artificial intelligence, using GIS to predict, to study the effects of climate change and vector. Then there's a very strong group working on natural products for the treatment of dengue. So they conduct both preclinical and clinical studies. Then the other areas of diagnostics. Of course, diagnostics is very important. So it's development of new diagnostics. And in addition to that, I think they're working on biomarkers. They're working on biomarkers to predict serious dengue. And of course, there's a lot of screening for antivirals going on as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Chanas. Okay, now Professor Sang, please.
Thank you very much for inviting me to join you in this webinar. I'm very excited to be here. So I'll introduce myself as a researcher that has been working at the Kenya Medical Research Institute here in Kenya. The Kenya Medical Research Institute is a large organization with branches based around the country. And the focus of research in Kenya is very broad, including infectious diseases and non-communicable diseases. Infectious diseases focus is also very broad. That I cannot cover specifically all of them here. But you can imagine with the institutions, branches around the country, we focus on all the problems that are occurring around the country. And in addition to that, as I would mention that there's a center that is specifically established to deal with viral diseases, the Center for Virus Research. The Center for Virus Research also has a variety of laboratories focusing on different viral diseases. And for the interest of our webinar today, we have the arbovirus and hemorrhagic fever laboratory, where we focus on all arboviruses that are endemic in the country and within the region, conducting surveillance, outbreak response, supporting diagnostics for the Ministry of Health, and even for countries within the region that lack that capacity. And dengue is one of our target diseases. And I've also had a very strong and close working relationship with the International Center for Insect Physiology and Ecology, considering that part of my background, in addition to virology, is in entomology. And I've worked with them for many years as a collaboration. I'm still attached to them. And in 2011, they established a laboratory Martin Luther Emerging Infectious Disease Laboratory, where we are still focusing on mainly arboviruses and looking at their epidemiology, their ecology, and trying to understand the factors, especially vector ecology, how that drives arbovirus disease. So in short, that's what I would say about myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Marco, your turn, please.
Hello, everybody. First of all, on behalf of Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, I would like to thank for the invitation to participate in this important discussion. My name is Marco Aurelio Krieger. I am the Vice President of Production and Innovation in Health of Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, and I work in Oswaldo Cruz Foundation since 1987, so for a long time. I will try to present you in a very short way the Fiocruz activities and our innovation ecosystem. So Fiocruz was created 120 years ago to face a dramatic sanitary situation in Brazil. At that time, we have the outbreaks of yellow fever, smallpox, and plague at the same time. And in less than 10 years, Oswaldo Cruz Foundation and his colleagues at that time, they was able to control the situation in Brazil. That was really a very dramatic situation. And in this sense, this is quite important because Fiocruz was not the beginning of scientific activities in Brazil, but with the creation of Fiocruz, the Brazilian society realized the benefits of use of scientific knowledge. So this is quite important, is in part of our DNA. And since then, we are trying to use the best science for the Brazilian public health system. And for us, it's an honor to be also a member founder of DNDi that is trying to use the best science for the most neglected population. We have a very complex ecosystem. We work from basic research. We have a lot of groups working basic research, but also we have some healthcare units. So we have 2 hospitals inside Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, the National Center for Infectious Disease in Brazil, and also the National Center for Mother and Child Health. We have also the technological development teams, we have education, and in addition of all this activity, we have also production facilities. So we are responsible for the production of vaccines, medicines, biodrugs, and diagnostic tests for the Brazilian public health system. Just to give an idea, for COVID-19, for instance, we have until now, we have delivered for the Ministry of Health in Brazil more than 115 million doses of vaccine. We have a partnership with AstraZeneca, and we are doing the production of the Oxford vaccine in Brazil. We have delivered more than 100 million diagnostic tests for the public health system in Brazil, the molecular test, and also the new rapid test. And I think this is just a way that we can try to have this fast response for the Brazilian public health system and the problems. In relation to dengue in Brazil, we are facing different waves of dengue since 1981, I think more than 40 years. And in Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, we are trying to develop some of the tools to help the Brazilian society to face dengue. For instance, we have the production for the molecular test and also rapid test. The idea here is try to have discriminatory tests because we have in the some populations different waves of Zika, dengue, and chikungunya in some place. So it's quite important to have this capability to discriminate the main 3 arbovirus disease. And also we are the hub in Brazil for the Valbácea project. So it will be really important for us to try to join this new project of DNDi, and I think we have an ecosystem that can try to help this initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that was for country. Now there's a fifth one, Thailand. So we take the liberty to introduce Faculty of Medicine, Siriraj Hospital a little bit. Okay, I myself is a virologist. So I work at this medical school for quite some time as researcher, faculty members, and now deputy dean for research. Faculty of Medicine, Siriraj Hospital is one of the biggest medical school in Thailand. It belongs to Mahidol University, and the dengue group at Siriraj Hospital has been working on dengue research for several decades now. I myself is virologist, but I'm not a dengue person per se. I previously working on mostly emerging infectious, emerging viruses, but lately I kind of joined to this dengue group. So at the moment, our effort is trying to understand some of the repurposed drugs that have antiviral activity, try to understand the mechanism, and also try to understand how to best combine them to have the synergistic effect. That's one of the current area of interest. We can contribute this testing and also our drug in the pipeline that we think have a good potential antiviral activity to the network. We can also probably help with the animal experiment as well, but we probably won't do the animal experiment ourselves. But we want to try to understand and compare the animal model to human because the group think that to put it in very simple way, we think people would think that viral load would tell you everything, but the group believe that when you look at the viral RNA, sometimes you don't see the real picture because some of the RNA are not infectious, and maybe we can use antigen and maybe other marker as well to try to understand the level of viral replication. And that's something that we would be interested in comparing animal to human, and that can lead to the other one that probably will be our unique contribution to the group because here at Siriraj we are establishing the control human infection model, which is the model where you inoculate people, healthy people with attenuated virus. So the virus will replicate. We can measure viral load, but it won't cause any illness or any disease. So it will. We hope that it will kind of accelerate the testing because we can test a lot of drugs. We can compare them. We can see preliminary efficacy without going into the phase 3 trial, which we will need a lot of time and effort and also investment. Okay, that would be our contribution to the group, to the network. So for DNDi panelists, you all know already Dr. Bernard, but Dr. Isabella, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the cluster of viral disease at DNDi.
Thank you, Professor Prasert. So just in terms of background, my background is in clinical infectious diseases, and I've been involved and worked in research and development with a focus on neglected patients and neglected disease for the over 20 years now. Been with DNDi for quite a long time, and the cluster for viral diseases at DNDi is it's new. It covers the scope of diseases currently in the portfolio are hepatitis C, it's HIV with work in pediatric HIV and in advanced HIV, more specifically on a project on cryptococcal meningitis. And we are now integrating dengue in our portfolio. And this is a new area. It has just been approved by our board in December last year, and for that integration, we really we actually consulted and engaged with a range of stakeholders and groups, including a number of you that are here present in this panel today. So this is a work that is starting, and then today it's wonderful to be able to discuss the dengue program as we move ahead in this new area of engagement for the organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we are going into the discussion part. So I would like to start with maybe ask Dr. Bernard to give us a little bit about the introduction of these South-South co-ownership, co-creation, co-investment as well model. Please, Dr. Bernard.
Thank you. I have to say we are, the description of South to South is just happening now because we, in this conversation, we have exactly the key institution that will create the condition for this South to South collaboration. For me, it's a good opportunity to say hello to Marco and Shana that are well connected with the DNDi for many years. I'm very happy to have a first contact with Professor Pramod and Professor Rosemary, but they're also very well connected to institutions that have been working with us. I think it's exactly the model is this one. So we have to use the skills of those different partners. We have to use the capacity of the different countries, of course, combined with additional members, because we'll need to have private partners joining this group. It's fundamental. So here we have several options, of course, depending on a product that will be selected, but here it will be fundamental to attract a group of private partners. But here I would say the 18 years experience of DNDi combined with the individual experience of all those institutions increase the chance of success. So for me, I'm very happy to be part of this panel. I'm not an expert on dengue, but I'm very confident that we will build rapidly something that could deliver.
Thank you. Okay, to start the discussion, the real discussion, I think we should start with our goals, our aim itself, because when we say, okay, we want to have dengue, well, people intuitively would think that, okay, this is a good thing and we need the drug. But when you look into detail, what kind of drug are we looking at? Because intuitively, I mean, people would think that we would need the drug for severe cases. The patient who already got into shock, because we know that without severe disease, dengue is self-limited disease, and we don't need the drug. Maybe people would think that we don't need a drug for non-severe case. And I would have to give a little bit of background to audience who are maybe not familiar with dengue. If you give the drug antiviral, I mean the drug that we use as antiviral, at the time that people already get into shock or start to get shocked, it may not be that useful, because at that point the virus is already almost eliminated from the body by the immune system. So now, if we want to have the drug to be effective, we have to give it early, and that would pose some problem, because we have to give it to a lot of patients, even people who may not need it because they are still limited. So maybe because Sabella, you are the director of the cluster of viral disease, maybe you can start shedding light on this issue. What are we looking at? What are we trying to achieve? Maybe in terms of target product profile of this drug. Mr. Bella, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question, Professor. And indeed, this for us, as we had our discussions, was really trying to pinpoint and understand the needs, right? In when we talk about dengue therapeutics, what we are aiming for, as part of these consultations, we have worked on a target product profile. And in these discussions is that the primary focus is really on that of treating dengue, prevent progression to severe dengue and complications. And therefore, really trying to decrease the burden to really to health systems and to society, so that we can treat as early as possible, ideally dengue without warning signs as a primary focus. No doubt the disease span is important more broadly, right? But as an initial goal, and it would be that of tackling dengue before progressing and preventing such progression. When we're discussing the details, we really want ideally a product that would be useful globally, right? That would cover the different serotypes, the 4 serotypes, that would actually could be used. And we talk here in terms of an acceptable targets, or ideally, optimally, that optimally, it should be able to use in adults, children, across the range, and ideally even also in pregnant women, optimally in that. And that we also need something that is safe, that would be, and that can be administered orally, ideally. In the discussions, we did not exclude the possibility that actually that an intravenous route of administration for single dose could be actually a concept that was not excluded. It was actually kept within targets, but something that ideally would be priced affordably. And when talking affordably here, really, we were thinking that optimally in the range of an antimalarial, in terms of an antimalarial treatment. So it actually really wide coverage, safe, affordable, easy to use. Ideally, not more, and also for short treatment regimens. So this is what I'm describing. It's really a result of the discussions that we had so far, right? And it's really a tough target to achieve, and that's why we need to be working together in preparing. There are some recent developments. It's really interesting to see what's happening in the landscape in terms of potential novel antivirals, but actually the opportunities here in the pipeline, in terms of repurposing agents, some of what we learned and may have from COVID that could be potentially also of use for a dengue indication, but that's indeed the challenge that we have ahead in terms of targets moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, what we try to achieve is not only something effective to all dengue strain or serotype, but it has to be very affordable, because we have to treat a large number of people to see or to save. Let's say, for example, in Thailand, we have a very low mortality rate. It's like 0.1, so 1 in 1,000 patient who get dengue would die. To prevent one death, you need to treat 1,000 people. So in terms of health economics, this is something very challenging. We need to have something very, very affordable. And because we aim at that, I think this is why DNDi come into the picture, because this is probably not something that drug industry would look for, because they would look for something that will, well, I mean, at least at the beginning, can be sold at a much higher price. So therefore, I think not only that it's because it's neglected disease, dengue, but also the model that we are looking for to have impact. We need to have something very, very affordable. So, and that come to, co-creation, co-ownership, and the South-South collaboration. And I think when we talk about South-South collaboration, the biggest player in the South is Fiocruz, I think. And therefore, I would like to ask Dr. Marco. So when DNDi talk about South-South collaboration and co-creation, co-ownership, how do you see that, and how what is Fiocruz experience? Because I imagine that Fiocruz must have a lot of experience with something like this. In collaboration, bringing something for the public good. So, Dr. Marco, please.
I think one important point that we have in endemic countries, we have the conditions to aggregate a lot of different expertise to try to work in a development project. So, for instance, we have a lot of groups doing the basic research that they know the biology of the virus, that they can have cellular models to evaluate and to do preclinical evaluations. We also have in our regions, we have clinical expertise that a lot of doctors that work with patients with dengue. And in our case, we have also the people that work with technology development. So I think in this case, we can have an ecosystem that is able to support this kind of project. And I really believe that the support of an institution like DNDi can accelerate this integration, because it's not only Oswaldo Cruz, but we will try to do this in all regions in the world that have this endemic disease. So just to give you an idea, in the outbreak of Zika, we have in less than 1 month, a lot of people inside of Oswaldo Cruz Foundation try to work in different fields. So our team of epidemiological was able to find a correlation between the Zika infection and the microcephaly in less than 1 month. And at the same time, we have the people in our production facilities trying to adapt our molecular test in order to include the new virus, the Zika virus. Everything, in this case, we have different teams in different parts of Brazil working very hard in less than 1 month. I think the way to, and we try to integrate this. So I think this will be a good start point, and I am sure that DNDi will play an important role trying to integrate all these capabilities that we have in the endemic regions. But I think it's important to highlight that in addition to the development, the local production will allow us to establish a policy to combat dengue outbreaks, because the main problem is that we have different waves during the time, and we need to be prepared for the next wave. So if we have the capability to do the local production, this will allow us to have the capability to have this fast response. And I think this is also important to say.
Well, thank you. You said the wave remind me of our discussion yesterday here. There are people asking about why the dengue in Thailand go down a lot this year. And we think this is because of COVID. This is kind of strange, why COVID would drive the dengue epidemic down. But for me, I think people think of dengue as not person-to-person transmission, but for me, it actually is. Just that you have a mosquito in the middle. The thing is, the Aedes mosquito doesn't travel far. It stays around the house. And if people stay at home and they don't change their place that much, there's no people to carry the virus from place to place. And that's why dengue, at least in Thailand, go down a lot. I don't know about everywhere else, but at least in Thailand, it's kind of gone this year because of the COVID. And that is actually dangerous because we know that after a few quiet years, there will be a big wave because people don't have immunity against the virus. So within a couple of years, we would be, terribly attacked by dengue. And if we can get ourselves, started soon, I hope we will catch up the next week, the next wave. At least for the clinical trial, I think. So, okay, well, the model of South-South collaboration, I think some people would think that we are competing with the industry. I don't know whether you think this is a competition or what do we do with the industry. Dr. Bernard said earlier that there will be industry partner, private partner join later, or it could be. Dr. Pramod, you mentioned earlier that you help the industry in India produce vaccine, test vaccine, and a lot of other products in the COVID outbreak. So how do you see us, the network, working in collaboration or in competition or in whatever with the industry? What do you think, Dr. Pramod?
Thank you. So I think competition to an extent is all right. So when we talk about a new antiviral being developed, I think industry has to come in. And it has to be a partnership between academia and industry when we talk about new antivirals, because they have deeper pockets to invest heavily in development of a new drug, right from the time or from the lab to the clinic. But when we talk about repurposing of the available drugs, as is likely to be the focus for dengue, then I think there is no really competition here. We are talking about collaboration between institutions, and once you find that one of the repurposed drugs is working well, I think industry will be happy. They not always that for existing drug they'll be looking for huge profits. Industry will be happy that you have a drug which works against dengue. So for repurposing of drugs, I see no reason that there will be any competition. In fact, there'll be more collaboration. For new drug development, of course, I think we'll have to rely more on industry and academia partnership to take it forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. About the industry, maybe may I rephrase the question a little bit, because there has been question that industry, some big pharma company has invest a lot in dengue drug and haven't succeeded yet. So how we do better? How will we do better? Or how will our South-South collaboration have a better chance to do better? Maybe not in terms of competition, but in terms of learning from the past. What should we do that will accelerate our success? Learning from what the industry has faced. Dr. Shahnaz, would you like to share your thought?
I had problems with sound earlier on. Can you hear me now? Is it better now?
A little bit better, but try to speak closer to the microphone. we can hear you, but okay, we can hear you, but not that clear. Okay, go ahead. Okay.
Well, I think you're right in that industry, is interested in making profits, and there's some diseases that they're just not interested in, and dengue is one of them. I think it's only vaccines that they're interested in. So, but I feel that this model should be led by the endemic countries themselves. So the endemic countries should take the lead, should take the ownership, and should take control of the program. And already a lot of the R&D is being done in endemic countries. It's just putting all this together and accelerating the R&D. I think that's what we need to do. And of course, there's some stage that industry will have to come in. And for instance, manufacturing the drugs, they have to come in at that stage. And I think research groups and industry have to work together. But also this is where DNDi has its expertise. DNDi has this wonderful talent in putting partners together. So I think that's why this has a chance of working because of DNDi's expertise. And I can tell you from my own experience working with DNDi on hepatitis C, we did the research on our own. DNDi got us partners with industry, and more importantly, DNDi also provided support, technical support, assistance in certain areas that we were not experts in. For instance, intellectual property and drug registration, for instance. So I think in this way we can actually work together with industry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Sang, I was really surprised. Seen one of your statements, you said people are only now starting to realize that dengue is a problem in Africa. For me, it's really surprising because, as a virologist, I was taught that dengue was originated in probably Africa or Southeast Asia, and it has been in Africa for forever. So I thought that Africa and Southeast Asia or Latin America would be similar in facing the dengue. Why is that? People are less aware of dengue in Africa. So what your your explanation about this is, Dr. Sang?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, so dengue occurred in Africa very early in the 19th century. In the late 1800s, it's documented that dengue outbreaks happened. And later on, we started, there are reports that dengue transmission was occurring in the 60s and the 70s. In fact, I think the first detection of dengue, where dengue was actually isolated, happened in Nigeria in 1964. So dengue was in Africa, but around the 80s and 70s and 80s, the outbreaks were very scarce, very rare. They happened, but they were reported occasionally in West Africa and parts of East Africa. The reason why I say that we are now starting to realize that dengue is a problem is because of the recent reemergence, where we are now having more frequent, more widespread reports of dengue outbreaks, both in West Africa, even in East Africa, and all the way to the north. 2015, I think, Egypt reported their first outbreak with quite extensive impacts on the population. And these outbreaks are becoming more frequent. For instance, in my own country, we are now seeing cases of increased cases of dengue, suggestive of an outbreak, almost every year in certain parts of the country, especially along the coast and the northern part of the country where we border with Somalia. And as you see that, we also see samples being confirmed that come to us of cases occurring in places like Somalia and Djibouti. So it's now more frequent, bigger outbreaks. One could say maybe the detection and awareness has grown, but I think also the outbreaks have become more frequent, because in the 80s and late 70s, there were huge outbreaks that ran through East Africa. But after that, we didn't see any activity, and until 2011 to 2014, there were outbreaks occurring more frequently. And it looks like now we are having dengue outbreaks almost yearly, occurring in certain seasons. So yeah, we become now aware that dengue is becoming a problem in the continent. Thank you.
But are people less? I'm sorry, man. A little bit of echo. Okay, it's gone now. Are people less aware of dengue than, let's say, in Southeast Asia or Latin America, or they do aware of the danger of dengue? I mean, is it well known in the public, in the people, that there's a terrible disease here, and they have to prevent themselves from mosquito? Is that the awareness growing up, or is already there?
So now that we are having more frequent cases reported, the awareness is growing. Of course, it's the detection and diagnosis of dengue is heavily impacted by other co-circulating endemic diseases. So malaria is very important in many countries in Africa. And when a patient presents with febrile illness, that's the first route of investigation. And that has contributed to, and there are other fever illnesses, including malaria, that have contributed to masking detection of dengue. Meanwhile, the disease continued to be transmitted and to cause disease in the population. And it's usually when you're not able to make diagnosis, the patient is not responding to malaria treatment, then you begin to think about other causes. And then you start to think about dengue, chikungunya. And by that time, possibly if the patient had dengue, the virus itself is cleared. So then diagnosis becomes even more difficult because you're more certain that you're dealing with dengue when you detect the virus itself. When you detect antibody, we have other flaviviruses that co-circulate, that complicate diagnosis. So diagnosis is a challenge, and also because of the focus on malaria and other fever illnesses, the medical fraternity have tended to overlook dengue as a cause of febrile illness, and therefore recognition of cases is still very low. And there's need for a lot of awareness. There's need for improved detection, recognition and detection, so that we can start to see dengue soon enough to be able to make the right diagnosis and even to be able to characterize the disease, to establish the extent and the burden.
Okay, so it seems like there is an additional challenge in Africa, because in Southeast Asia, well, if a child got high fever for a few days, almost always dengue. There's nothing much else. I mean, if that child doesn't have a respiratory symptom, just a fever, it's almost always dengue. Or, well, they have, or even if we need a diagnosis, diagnosis is not a big problem here. So in Africa, there will be more challenge, I think. And anyway, do you feel that, I mean, Africa is as urgently need the drug as everywhere else? I mean, Southeast Asia and the Latin America or India, because we think, I mean, in our region, we think we urgently need the drug. We will face the big epidemic soon, and we need the drug for sure. But in Africa, because people are less aware of it, and there are many other diseases, there are more challenge in terms of diagnosis. How do you think Africa will, well, if we have drug, would there be a good opportunity to implement in a large scale, or there will be still difficulty? Because when we say difficulty and challenge, I was thinking about clinical trial, but it will be even more challenge in terms of implementation in a large scale. What do you think? Okay, so if we start to think about
maybe implementing the drug trials or availing treatment for dengue in Africa. For drug trials, for instance, there are countries that have clinical trial centers that can actually support drug trials. I would speak for my country. In Kenya, we have, I think, three clinical trial centers that are available in different parts of the country, doing trials for different diseases. But need for drugs for Africa can only be, we can establish that once we know the burden of disease. Currently, the extent of the disease occurrence and the impact on the population, as I said earlier, has been masked by other fever-causing illnesses. And we do not, we haven't done much to establish the true burden of disease in Africa. And judging from the recent, like from 2016, 17, 18, if you look at countries in West Africa, countries in East Africa, the extent of outbreaks that are now being documented is increasing. And we are now seeing more co-circulation of multiple serotypes of dengue. We do not, and we have not established whether this is going to impact on the severity of disease. There's not a lot of clinical characterization of dengue illness where dengue outbreaks occur. Very few studies have been done, but there is documentation of some very severe dengue cases that have occurred in some of the countries. There is report of severe dengue in Egypt. There are reports of severe dengue in West Africa and also in parts of East Africa, like in Angola, when they were having outbreak of yellow fever, there seemed to have been dengue also going on. And so those complications then have masked the true burden of dengue. And that needs to be clearly understood before we can really say that Africa doesn't need drug. I think we need to move away from making assumptions so that the continent receives the attention that it needs to combat disease like other regions. You mentioned earlier that the dengue originated from Africa. When we see dengue in Africa, often when we do genotyping, we find that it has come from Asia. So I think that is a big debate that requires a lot of scientific the research analysis that can help us to really understand who got dengue first. But it is a very interesting area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that Africa needs the drug, and we, even though there will be some challenge, we will have to target that we will try to overcome that challenge in addition to getting the drug. Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. I wonder whether any of you have a final thought to share. Anyone? If not, I mean, I have one last final question, maybe just a thought, and if anyone of you would like to share, is that looking at COVID-19, this is an unprecedented speed, not only for vaccine but also for drug as well. And there's all kind of drug that were tested, repurposed drug, repurposed in the sense that is antiviral for other virus and change into COVID-19. There have been a lot of effort both from the public and also from the private part. I wonder whether what we can learn from that to make our success, I mean, accelerated like like the way COVID-19 was or will be. Anyone? anyone would like to share? Isabella, please.
Well, perhaps I can get started and then give some thought for other colleagues. I think there is a lot of learnings from COVID. I think in terms of, there are many, I think when we look, there were certainly, when you look at the drastic reductions that we saw in timelines for development, for drug development, for vaccines, and particularly in terms of vaccines, what happened in terms of monoclonal approaches, what happened in diagnostics, and so on. So there was this. I think the other element here is in terms of when you look that no single tool is important, isn't it? It's enough, and that one needs combined approaches and an integrated portfolio with many tools, and each one of them can and will need to play a role. We need to collaborate. The collaborative approaches and actually the examples that in terms of some of the clinical trial platforms, networks, the limitations of very small trials, right? And the fact that actually platform trials were ones that actually delivered, but at the same time, right, the fact that one needs to consider the needs from resource limited settings up front and early on, and if there is if there is this incredible as we think in building therapeutics, there is this sharp contrast, right, in what happened in COVID in high income countries, and really how things lag behind in countries where in the needs for low and middle income countries. So we need to do different. And I think one of the reasons why we've been thinking and in these discussions on the South-South collaboration is that this is indeed that if one is to succeed in dengue, right, one needs to approach it in a different way, and making sure that we take into consideration these examples. There are some technical also learnings from COVID. I think what we learned in terms of some of the difficulties in repurposing therapeutics in COVID, and the many difficulties and failings, and the fact that actually one had a sound mechanism and orientation through mechanism that actually is to guide and repurposing. This is where one has an increased chance of success, and also the importance of taking into consideration host-directed therapies, right? We saw in terms of the surprises very early on and the impact of corticosteroids. So what that does tell us in terms of dengue and approaching dengue, where we know that the inflammatory component is very important, and the fact that and particularly if we want to, although we are hoping and to reach patients early enough, that we may be able to increase the window of opportunity in dengue by taking into consideration also some of these inflammatory or other host components. So the range, the range of lessons in COVID, and plus the pipeline, and I think it's something that we touched upon early on, and it links a little bit with the discussions your question earlier in the meeting in relation to, why would think that we would now succeed, right? Where so much effort and so many years and in the past people have failed, and I think exactly because we are building on what happened before. There are opportunities for cross-fertilization in terms of platforms. So I'll let other colleagues speak. Sorry if I spoke too long, but actually just to highlight the many examples, and I think that to take us forward.
So I would just like to say two things, that what COVID-19 has taught us is the beauty of international collaboration and speed. I think for far too long, the science has been progressing at a very slow pace because, there is no kind of urgency seen. COVID-19 told us that there is urgency and we need to act now. So I think speed and collaboration are the two important things that we have learned from this pandemic. And I think this will help us going forward in the case of dengue as well. I'll stop here.
Okay, thank you. I think that I think beautifully conclude our discussion. Thank you so much for this lively discussion. So I would like to turn the floor to Dr. Bernard to give us closing comment. Thank you.
To learn about some lesson about COVID-19, because the awardees of 2021 to the Prince Mahidol Institute, Prince Mahidol were the inventor of the ARN messenger. So maybe we have to communicate a little bit more with them and learn something on dengue. But I would like to just make 5 points to complete a little bit, and just more to get a little bit the messages that you have shared with us this afternoon. First of all, I think one of the similar challenge, in fact, that between dengue and COVID-19 will be to go for very early diagnosis and treatment. This is really a challenge because of course, if you want to use antiviral, it should be used very early. So I think this we'll have to have in mind that close correlation between diagnosis and treatment should be the case on this disease. Second, many of you talk about industry, and I agree with the comment that it will be less complicated with repurposing drugs. But I think if we think about new antivirals, we have learned a lot from other experience, including hepatitis C. And here I would say what we call the business development aspect, so the capacity to sign a good licensing agreement, to think about transfer of technology, as Marco mentioned. I think all these elements should be really fully integrated as a strategy on dengue. So it's my second comment. I agree with Shana that lesson learned on regulatory and IP should be implemented also on this field. It will be key. Fourth, I think large clinical trial network will be fundamental. And of course, when you bring together the network that we have today, so partner from Thailand, Malaysia, India, Africa, and Brazil, you have a capacity to conduct clinical trial that is really a major asset on this. On last point, and here is really, if we are back to the comparison with the situation of COVID-19, the big difference with COVID-19 is that the chance that the very rich country will have a lot of interest to invest on dengue is very little, because it concerns essentially travelers. So even if we put this in a context of climate change, or maybe we'll see some outbreaks of dengue happening in the south of the US or I don't know where, but it's not for tomorrow. And so I think here it's a big difference, but it's also probably a big opportunity, because if I refer to negotiation and entering into a relationship with a pharma company, this increases the chance of success. Here we could imagine that in working in such a network, we could have in mind a strategy of large volume and low price. It's a strategy that could be attractive for industry, and is probably the one that we have to pursue. So I think to conclude, I'm very optimistic after this exchange, because we have the good partners on the table. So we started to sign an MOU yesterday with Siriraj. I think this, of course, will open the door for other agreement with the other partners, but all together, I think we increase the chance to have a successful program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernard. So I'm grateful to all our speakers for their time today. Some of them woke up early, so thank you, Dr. Krieger. Thank you, Professor Praset, for facilitating this great session. I think it was very interesting to hear about the potential of all partners and what we can all bring on the table. What we need to do with this new approach is really to turn the table around and put endemic countries at the center of the research. We also need to say that this initiative is not exclusive, it is inclusive. And we have just pushed today the start button, the go button, and there is still a lot to do. In fact, probably the challenge would be now to deliver together, to design this project together, and to show that endemic countries can find the resources to support their ambitions by collaborating together. So myself and my colleague at DNDi, we are looking forward to starting this new and interesting chapter that will also define DNDi in the future. Special thanks to Dr. Bernard Pécoul, who is the Prince Mahidol Award recipient of 2020, for his participation to the discussion and for his closing remark. Huge thanks to everyone who worked hard behind the scene in Malaysia, Thailand, and Switzerland. They put a lot of effort in making this webinar happening, so thank you very much. This webinar is now over. Thank you to all viewers, and we will make sure to keep everyone informed of our progress. Thank you, obrigado, merci, kapun krap, terima kasih, shukriya, asante. Thank you very much.